Okay, so now we finally are getting to animation. Okay, so there's a lot of things to learn about animation, and we'll start with the basics here today. And as we progress, we'll get more in depth and get more control and learn more understanding about animation. But basically, all animation is just changes over time, right? Whether you're using something like Maya or After Effects or Final Cut or any type of video rendering software, right? Animation is just changes in time. And we do this by setting what are called keyframes. So along the bottom here, we have our time slider, right? And this can change depending on the frame rate right now. So down here in the bottom, you have different frame rates that we can use, right? So some of this is probably familiar to some of you, right? But 24 frames per second is what most cinema uses, right? 24 frames every second, right? And as technology has improved, right, we've been able to increase that frames per second. So now in television, you typically see 30 frames per second. Those of you that are gamers know that 60 frames per second is kind of an industry norm for games. But even now, right, some rigs are capable of doing up to 120 and even more, right? We can see there's a ton of options here for frames per second. So depending on what you use, for our purposes, mostly what we're going to be doing is going to be 60 frames per second. So that means every second we're getting 60 frames, right? And the standard, what we're going to do is this box right here is determining your starting frame. So we're just going to put a 1 there. And then for 60 frames per second, right, we just have to do a little bit of math. So depending on how long of an animation we want, let's say 5 seconds. So a 5-second animation at 60 frames per second would be 300 frames total, right? So we're going to just go ahead and put 300 in here. Okay? And then here we're going to put 300. Okay, so what this is doing right here is this is showing us, right, the range. So 1 frame to 300 frames. This is showing the max here. This is showing 1. So in here, all of these frames essentially would build our animation. So this video is going to be a little bit longer, but I'll try to chop it up and piece it up into different relevant sections. But if you want to go ahead and work through with this with me, and then yeah, this will be the weekly exercise where you'll post what's called a play blast, right? Which is essentially a non-rendered version of your animation that anybody can see whether they have Maya or not, right? It'll be a universal file format where people can preview your animation. So what we're going to do is we're going to do this together. We're going to just build, I'm going to do a very simple animation and kind of go through some of the things to know when you're making animations and the things to look out for, okay? So to start, let's say we're just going to build a little platform here. Okay, we're gonna do a ball. We're gonna do a rolling ball, right? Seems easy enough, but I mean, it is easy enough, but it will give you the idea of how animation works. Okay, so here we have a little platform, and then let's build a little ball. Okay, let's just move this here, and I'm gonna be switching around to my various views here to kind of line things up. But let's just say we put the ball over here, right? Right? We want to have that ball just sitting on there, right? Okay, so we're going to animate this ball rolling across, but well, let's have a little bit of fun though. We'll add some textures and some lighting and make it kind of a nice little scene. So let's go ahead and I'm going to add a light here. I'm going to add a spotlight. Okay. And I just hit 7 to turn on lights, right? So we can kind of see what we're looking for. Okay. So that's good for now. We'll adjust some of this stuff later on, but right now we're just getting set up with our preliminary scene, okay? So I just hit 5 to turn off the light so we can see the rendered forms. And then let's say I'm going to make this assign a new material. Let's do a pool table or some felt, right? So here we're going to go to shaders, standard surface, and then I'm going to go to hypershade. Okay, so the AI standard surface right here, this is what I just created. So get in the habit of naming this. So I'm just going to call this pool table, just so we know. And then sometimes you'll get this because it says, oh, it's not identifying the standard surface. Just ignore that. Go ahead and hit presets. So of all of these materials here, right, I would say velvet. Let me just double check. Velvet. Velvet's probably going to be the best. And then we'll replace that. And let's pick kind of a pool table green here. Something like this darker green. Okay, good. Okay. And then for our ball, let's I kind of wanted to show you guys a cool Boolean trick with text. So let's go ahead and I'm going to assign new material, shader, standard surface, and I'll come back to Hypershade. And the way I got the sphere is I just picked sphere from this drop down, right? You can have all these different objects, but because I'm just working with the basics sphere here, I chose that. And let's make a 8-ball. 8-ball will be cool. Can I do numbers? Okay, ball. Okay, and then presets, and then I want a really shiny, polished ball. So I'm gonna go with let's go with car paint. Car paint. We'll make that a nice black. Okay, good. Okay. And then within that pool ball, however, we got to make the white circle and then the 8, right? The 8. And, one thing we could do is we could just build a texture map in Photoshop or just type in an 8 and map that onto the ball, which that's one way to do it. But I also kind of want to show you a cool way that you can engrave using the difference Boolean. So let's go ahead and I'm going to zoom in onto the top of this ball here. And I'm going to go into face. And let's say I'm going to select here and then, oops, shift, right? I'm selecting and then I'm going to the next edge and holding shift. So I get that plus, double clicking. And as long as there are 4 sides, it will select everything around. It won't do it here with the triangles. So you have to come in and just manually select these. So go ahead and do that. Okay, and then I'm going to right click. I'm going to go to assign new material, shader, standard surface, come into Hypershade. And I guess I could make this car paint too. I don't know, but maybe I'll just make it a different. Here, I'll put inner circle. And then maybe I'll just do something. I'll do something different so it's not. So it's a little bit different. Let's do. Oh, I don't know. Let's do clay. Okay, replace. And I'll make that white. Oh, what happened here? Something got messed up. Hang on. Okay, well, I'm not going to worry about that. So basically, anyways, what you want to do is you want to just select the faces here to make a circle, assign it a different material. And what we're going to do here is rather than apply the 8 to the surface, we're actually going to use a Boolean and use a difference and actually get it to engrave a little indentation of that 8, right? Okay, so we're going to go to create type. Okay. So this type comes up really big. I'm going to erase that. I'm just going to press 8. Okay. And then I'm going to center this over and reduce the size. Okay, I'm going to go into my orthographic views to line this up. Oops. Okay, and then I want to rotate this. Oops. I want to rotate -90. Okay. Bring this up a little bit. Okay, so something like this, right? So you're going to center that over, right? Because what we're going to do, yeah, is we're going to use the Boolean and we're going to use a difference so we get a little bit of a engraving in there, and then we'll color that as well. Okay, so coming back to my perspective view, let me select my 8, and then let's see. Oops. So if you can tell, so if I just do the indentation right across, you see how the ball is curved, right? But my letter is not. So that means that the indentation, if I take this down a little bit, it's going to be kind of a strange indentation because it's not going to be as deep on the sides here. So what I want to do actually is I actually want to use the bend deformer to bend this 8 to shape it a little bit more with the ball. So, oh, sorry, I'm trying to get to I want to change some of the type here. I want to change the geometry. I want to extrude this a little bit so I have a little bit more to work with. Okay, so that looks pretty good there. And here I'm going to select the object. I'm going to come up to deform, and I'm going to use nonlinear, and I'm going to use bend. Okay, so because I already know which way I want to rotate this, I'm just going to put in the values manually because like I said, I know which values I want to do here. So let me just do this quickly. I want to do 90 and then 180 and then -90. Okay, so what this is going to let me do is, again, like you'd have to play around a little bit to get this to line up the right way. But what this is going to let me do is it's going to let me bend the 8 in the way that I want, right? Because I want it to bend this way. So here I'm going to just come to curvature and see I can hold the middle button and I can rotate that a little bit. So it's not a huge amount that I need to do, but it would have been noticeable. And I'm going to enlarge this a little bit. Okay. So remember from that Boolean video, or sorry, not the Boolean video. Remember from the last video we did, remember that these changes that we make are not permanent unless I delete the history. So that's what I'm going to do here is let me get my 8 into position. Okay, I'm going to select the 8, come to edit, delete by type, and then history. Okay, so now that's a permanent change to that object, a permanent deformation. Okay, so then if you recall from the Booleans, right, I'm going to click the sphere, hold shift, click the 8. Oh wait, sorry, let me get it into position first. Let me lower this down. Okay, and I'm just going to cut in a little bit. I mean, you can do this as much or as little as you like, but I'm just going to cut in there. And then now click the ball, shift click the 8, come up to mesh, Booleans, and then difference. Okay, so we can see what that did, right? That kind of created a nice little pocket there. Okay, and then remember, if we want this to be a permanent change now, we have to delete this history as well. Okay, so that gets rid of that. And then I'm going to just select this face in here. Now, sometimes the Boolean doesn't give you, like, your face might be a little bit messed up here on the 8, so I'm just going to hold shift and click and then kind of hover over any other parts that might not have such a clean mesh. But so I have that face of the 8 selected, and I'm going to assign existing material, and I'm going to assign it the same as the ball, which I thought I had made one, but let me just go ahead and make a new one here. And Hypershade. Is that the one? Okay, so there we go. Okay, so we've got our ball, we've got our felt table, we've got our lights, okay? And this is how we start an animation, okay? So we want this ball to start here and end here. We have 300 frames to do it in, so 60 frames per second. And the way that, again, all animation is just changes over time. So coming down into this time slider, make sure you're on the 1. This is the first slide that we have. Okay, and this is the object that's moving, right? The ball. So right now, all of these attributes, translate, rotate, scale, these are all where I want them to be. So with the object selected, you just come in and you press S, okay? So by hitting S, you see a little red tick came up right here. So that's keyframe. Set keyframe is what S is. So S sets keyframe, and then it shows you right here in red. All of the attributes of this object have been set in this, and you know they're set because you get this dark red color, okay? So once you see that, you know that all these attributes have been set to that keyframe, okay? So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to my orthographic view just to keep this kind of, so I don't move things in a way that I don't want. So now I'm going to take my 8, okay, and my keyframe is at 0 right now. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go all the way to 300, okay, and now I'm going to take my ball and just using the red arrow here, I'm going to move it to right here. Okay, so the speed is determined by a few different things, right? Because I'm only setting the 2 keyframes and I'm on 300 now, Maya is going to determine the speed itself. It's going to go, you know, the speed is going to be appropriate to the time. So once I get the ball where I want it, okay, do you see how all of these values now are pink? So what this tells me is this is saying that there was a keyframe, things got changed, but now nothing is saved again, right? So if you see the 2 different reds, if you see the dark red, that's set. If you see light pink, that means it's not set, okay? So now that I'm in position, now that I'm where I want to be, I hit S again, okay? Then you see a little red tick mark comes up here, and then all of these values right here are in dark red now, okay? So then we come back to my view here, right? As I scrub through back to the beginning, you can see there's movement that happens. And then here's where you can play and stop your animation. You can go to the end of it. You can go to the beginning of it. There's a little icon right here that lets me do, here, I'll just show you. So if I just hit play, okay, it's going to loop, right? You see this right here? This is telling it to just loop. I can click on this and it will just do 1 time and just stop. If I click it again, you get this little back and forth icon. If you play now, watch what it does. It plays in forward and reverse, and it will just continue doing this. So if you're seeing a little bit of choppiness, it's just because I'm recording. I got Maya open, Photoshop open, got Spotify music playing. So, but ideally, right, this should be nice and clean and smooth. And then 1 more time. Now, what's the problem with this, right? It doesn't look very believable because the ball isn't rotating, right? It's not spinning. So, but that's the first issue is just getting the ball from point A to point B. And then I'll stop the video here just so it's not so long. And then the next video we'll go into animating the roll, and we'll talk a little bit more about the cameras and the lighting and a few other things. Okay, so I'll stop it here and then we'll pick this up in the next video.